Hey there, welcome to Main Street Living. I am Cheryl Nelson.
Hey guys, I'm Quincy Carr.
And I'm Danielle Alvari.
Well, guys, it is February, and this month we are honoring Black History Month. And it's so important. We have so much to learn still.
Yes, and so much history still to talk about. I feel like I learn something new every year, and it's just so important to discuss. So, Quincy, what does it kind of mean to you to celebrate this?
Well, I mean, ladies, I can say first and foremost, it's important to mention how important Black history is to the entire country. Like it impacts us all. In fact, it goes beyond the more commercialized contributors that we hear about each year. You know, the Martin Luther Kings, the Harriet Tubmans, or even the groundbreaking sports heroes like Jackie Robinson and, of course, Muhammad Ali. But truth is, much of our history, from what I understand, is either being kept silent or even ignored or just simply omitted. So this pretty much gives us all the opportunity to just talk to one another and be open enough to have that type of conversation. And I think everyone could just get more information and be more knowledgeable about the history and the contributions of Black Americans here.
Yeah, I think that it's really important to celebrate Black History Month because we get to talk about things and kind of open those kind of floodgates, if you will, to have those discussions that maybe people are afraid to have or things like that. And we just kind of have a month to learn a little bit more about each other. And I think that's so important.
Yeah, actually, it should be 365 days a year. Learn it.
Yes, it's easy to learn too. You can look stuff up online and books, or even just talk to friends and just learn.
Yeah. But I know for a lot of people that Black History Month, they don't really understand or they don't know a lot about it. So we're going to kick off the show with bringing in some experts who are going to tell us all about what Black history is all about. And we're going to talk about it all show long. So stick with us right here on Main Street Living. Welcome back into Main Street Living. As we head into February, we are celebrating Black History Month, remembering and honoring the contributions of African Americans to both our history and our communities today.
That's right. So why is this month such an important time for all Americans to learn about our collective history and the remarkable role that African Americans play in our country? Well, Bob and Beverly Elliott are here to share their insights. Welcome to Main Street Living. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
So the origins of Black History Month go all the way back to 1915. And many things have changed in our world since then, obviously. But the reason behind Black History Month seems to remain. So what do you feel is the purpose of Black History Month in 2022?
Well, I think some things have changed, but there's a lot that has stayed the same. Back in 1915, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, he had this historical degree as a doctor. And one of the things that he felt is that we need to learn to celebrate the lives as well as the struggles of African Americans in this community. So he decided, let's not just do my community, let's do a week. So he got some of his scholarly friends together and they decided, where is our history? We don't read it in the books. We don't see it in the newspapers. So he did a lot of research. It's still that way. In Arizona, 46% of our population is BIPOC and as well as LGBTQ. But if you look in the books, there's about 2% that are represented by those underrepresented people. So I think we still have a lot of work to do. And we still want to celebrate as well as inform people about what the struggles were, but also what were the triumphs.
You actually bring up a great point there, Beverly and Bob. I'll ask you this, why do you think it's so important to set aside this time to remember our Black history and also to look at the incredible contributions of African Americans in the communities today?
There are so many stories out there, but it doesn't seem like people know about them. Take, for example, here locally, a lady by the name of Quincy Douglas. And her son-in-law is actually on our board of directors. But Quincy Douglas, coming out of the South Park neighborhood, actually started what's known here as Vantran, being able to take vans around to help people that cannot get rides into their doctors, et cetera. So there's a lot of little stories around this community that need to be memorialized and put together.
And moving forward, Bob and Beverly, how would you like to see all Americans celebrating Black History Month this year? And what can we do to learn more and to get more involved?
Well, I'd love to see Americans celebrating Black History Month by buying a book by a Black author like Ruby Bridges. She wrote a book, This Is Your Time. I think those types of books, along with books like Ruby, just get into some of the authors. Try some soul food. Go out and try soul food. Have some greens, some cornbread. Purchase some music by a Black author. So if you don't like hip hop, there's R&B. You can always go back. We're from Michigan. Motown, old Motown would be great. And just also maybe even talking with a friend who's African American, saying, we've had our neighbors come over and say, during this pandemic, do you feel like everything's okay with your health when we see this disparity going on with African Americans? So check on your friends just to make sure they're okay. I think that would be a great way for us to celebrate and to understand what's going on in the community.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true, because I do know that, like at the post office, you can request, the Black History stamps as well. But speaking of Black History now, you all are in the process of starting up a museum in Tucson, the African American Museum of Southern Arizona. Can you quickly tell us about your plans for the museum and why you think it's important?
Well, the plans for the museum actually began during the pandemic. I'm helping my grandson, who was 7 years old, as a first grader, and he says, Nanu, that's what they call me. Hey, can you help me find a famous African American to do this report on? He decides to, get on his tablet, and he slides, he Googles, he finds Martin Luther King and all these wonderful people. And I work with a museum in Michigan. He said, well, you're doing a museum in Michigan. Where's our museum in Arizona?
Yeah.
I had no answer. I had no answer. And I have a friend who did some research, and she said, well, it's pretty limited of what you were going to find for African Americans there. And I said, well, how about us get together? She's been mentoring me. And so we did some research and how to start a museum, along with my 7-year-old grandson and my husband and some wonderful people who have stepped up to the plate, or on our board and our advisory board.
Oh my gosh, more power to you. I'm so proud of you both for everything you've done, everything that you continue to do. When is the museum slated to open, and how can our viewers learn more?
Well, we're in a situation like a lot of businesses that with COVID, opening up anything that would bring people in is a little difficult. But what we would really recommend people to do is to go to our website. The website is www.aamsaz.org. If you think about AAM, African American Museum, SAZ, Southern Arizona. So if you go to www.aamsaz.org, you will see a lot of what will be there. One of the things about our museum will be, there's the old traditional type where you go in, you see a lot of artifacts and there's some statement underneath it. We'll have a little of that, but we want to bring this museum into the year 2022. Where you have digital experiences, you have interactive experiences.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
Awesome. I think it's great. And just to piggyback on what Cheryl has said, I'm very proud to see that you guys are doing something to make an impact and also keep people informed of Black history. Thank you both for being a part of the show today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks to Bob and Beverly. Now, Cheryl, we got to have our guests stick around, because up next, we have someone else who's been bringing laughter to audiences for over 50 years. In fact, her contribution to Black history may surprise you. So you don't want to miss it. Stay right there.
Welcome back to Main Street Living. Danielle, Quincy, Black History Month can sometimes feel very serious, and there are definitely some serious issues to discuss and a lot of ugly history to unpack. But there are many uplifting stories to explore as well.
That's right, Cheryl. In fact, our next guest has spent a career giving audiences the reason to lighten up a little and laugh a little more. And we are very excited to have the very first and best African-American female impressionist, Dr. Sylvia Traymore. Morrison, welcome to the show, Doc.
Hello, how are you?
Doing great. How about you?
I'm good. I'm
Good.
Excited to be here. Just excited.
Yeah, well, you look like you're in high spirits. I remember I met you a couple years ago at the DC Comedy Festival, and I just admire who I had a chance to be across from. But you've had an incredible career, Dr. Sylvia, and it's still going strong. But back in the early days, you were managed by Red Fox, and you also hosted a roast for Muhammad Ali. And from what I understand, then you signed as an associate writer for Saturday Night Live. I mean, you got to tell us. It's a lot to unpack. So.
Well,
how did you get started?
Wow, Quincy, when you say it like that, it just sounds good. It's like, wow, who is that? But I signed my first management contract with Red Fox. And not only did I host the Muhammad Ali roast at a request from Dick Gregory, I replaced, you ready? I actually replaced, now I'm not saying anything about how this is. Richard Pryor was supposed to host the Muhammad Ali roast.
Wow.
Yeah, and he couldn't make it that day. And everybody was busy all across the country. Anybody that they could have flown in immediately was busy. And I had been to Europe to entertain the American troops. And one of the girls that I went to Europe with told Dick Gregory that if they hired me, they wouldn't have a problem. So I actually replaced Richard Pryor. It was like deep. It was like,
that's historic right there.
Yeah. So.
And you've entertained the troops. You've toured with Whitney Houston, just a name drop here. You've worked with countless legends basically over the years. What have been some of your favorite gigs that you've worked on, or who do you love to impersonate?
Well, one of my favorite gigs I worked on, and I love telling this quick story because it just warms my heart. I did 23 cities with Whitney Houston, 23 major American cities. And we did 3 spots in Canada. And this one particular night, she called me up on stage because we used to run out front to watch her perform after nobody was on the show but me and Whitney. I opened, she closed. And she was down up on the stage and looking down at me, and she said, and I'm like, what does she want? I don't know what, because everybody was afraid. It's Whitney Houston, And so she sent security out to get me to bring me on stage. And when I got on stage, she grabbed my hand and she lifted it up. I almost cry every time I tell the story. She lifted it up high in the air. And she said, hey, you guys, hey, wasn't Sylvia wonderful? Wasn't she just wonderful? And you could hear the roar of 15,000 people. Like, I believe you could hear it miles away. It was the most enchanting night of my career, I believe.
Wow.
That Whitney Houston gave me a stamp like that. So that was big.
Oh,
that was big.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's Whitney Houston, but like you're a working performer, a mom, and also an author of several books, Dr. Sylvia. You got to tell us about your books.
When I used to go to shows and people would ask me questions, and it would always be stuff about my career. And so I said, you know what, I'm just going to write it down in a book. And I didn't know what I was facing. It took me 5 years to finish the autobiography because I had to get the right dates, the right times, the right this, the right that, the right dot. I had to put in Saturday Night Live and touring with the Temptations and the Four Tops for the Motown's 25th. It was just a lot. So the name of the autobiography is Almost There, Almost. And after Whitney died, I was devastated, and I was doing a show in Philadelphia, and this whole story called Jelly Beans from Heaven came to me on stage, and I didn't even have to work. It only took me about a year to write that book. And then last year, year before, 2020, COVID came into my house, and I was sick, so sick. It was like demonic sick, evil, COVID, evil. And so I decided to write a book entitled Me, Satan, God, and COVID, because all 4 of us were in the room together. All 4 of us were in that room battling. We were battling. I said, oh, it was horrible. It was just horrible. So, and the 4th book that I'm working on to be released late this summer is entitled Wings of the Untold. And it's about a young Black female woman, myself, who went into the airlines as an airline stewardess, is what we used to call them back in the day, And I took that job because it gave me a chance to travel from New York to DC to LA, and I could go to all the clubs. But I had an experience as a flight attendant back in the 1970s. So it's amazing because my first professional show I did was in Washington, D.C. at a place called Constitution Hall. It seats about a couple thousand people. I don't know what it was. But the year 1969. So it put me over the 50-year mark. At least that's how I look at it.
That's a milestone.
Yeah.
That's how you look at it.
Yeah.
But now when people ask you all these questions about your life, you can say, read the book.
I do say that. But if they ask me specific questions, I'll give it to them.
Well,
I do say that. I do say, oh, my book is available on Amazon, or if you want a signed copy, just reach out to me. I'll send you a signed copy.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, so I do want to ask you, of course, especially because we're celebrating Black History Month, how you think your journey to success was made more difficult because you are a Black woman. And do you think it's gotten any better since you started?
What a great question. It was extremely difficult because I didn't know any other females, Black or white or Asian or nobody back then to call and say, meet me at the open mic, or let's do so-and-so, or how did I do? There was nobody. The only other comic that I knew who had a reputation was a woman named Moms Mabley. And she came up from out of the Chitlin circuit with it's some wonderful history with Red Fox and Pigmeat Markham. A lot of the comics that a lot of people don't know about, but they were nationally and internationally known. And me going into the couple of nightclubs back then, because we didn't have many clubs to go to. I believe I was the first Black girl to hit the Comedy Store stage in California, which was where I met David Letterman. We were in line together to do comedy. Jay Leno. I'm sorry I'm dropping names, but it is what it is. And Robin Williams was my very favorite. He was so nice to me. So of course I was devastated when he died. But I remember him telling me over and over, you know what, Sylvia, you're gonna be big. You're gonna be big. And I'm like, all of a sudden here comes Mork and Mindy. I said, that's
well, Sylvia, you've had, because we've got to go, but you've had such a great career spanning 5 decades. Really quick, how can our viewers keep up with you?
They can follow me on Instagram. I'm at Sylvia T. Morrison, and Facebook is Sylvia Traymore Morrison. I'm on Snapchat, WeChat, He Chat, She Chat. It's TikTok and all that other stuff. Yes.
And you also have a comedy event in Virginia on Valentine's weekend. So make sure you guys check that out as well.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Sylvia.
Thank you, guys.
All right, man. I wish we had so much more time with her because you can tell she has a million great stories. But unfortunately, we're moving on to our next story. So coming up next, we're going to meet a very special change maker. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back into Main Street Living. Quincy, Cheryl, one lesson we always try to teach kids is that everyone can make a difference in their community.
It's so true, Danielle. And while all of those small contributions can add up, some people end up making big contributions.
Yes, and Lawrence Weekly would fall into that big contribution category with all that he has done for his home state of Nevada. Take a look.
I would describe former Commissioner Weekly as a very thoughtful, engaged, and also a very inspiring leader.
He is one of those walking examples of sort of a full circle moment of community engagement, community support, and leadership.
Former Commissioner Weekly accomplished a lot in overseeing the construction of the Dr. William U. Pearson Center, the renovation of the MLK Community Center, which houses many of our seniors each and every day to enhance their quality of life. And now we can all enjoy the historic West Side Legacy Park that he also was a visionary of as well.
Understanding the need for volunteerism and community service to help especially the underserved community within the historic west side of Las Vegas, which he's a product of.
I had very humble beginnings, and to see that my life had purpose, or it has purpose, that it's impacting someone else's life, wow, it's an extraordinary feeling.
When I think about Lawrence Weekly, I think about someone who's compassionate, someone who's dedicated, someone who is going to make sure that the voices of the voiceless are represented in the hallways and in the offices of the most powerful places, and he is that person.
He is someone who loves the community, who always wants to see the community do better, and that he will do his absolute best to make sure that the community is connected to whatever resources are necessary so that it is a better place than he left it.
It's our job to make sure any resources out there, any partnerships we could establish to be able to bring in resources, to say, come on, we're behind you, we got you. That to me is what keeps that hope alive.
He brings a lot of value to any institution, but particularly with his current role as a chief of staff at the College of Southern Nevada, which is the engine for workforce development.
There is so much hope just looking at students in their laptops, taking notes with their backpacks headed to class. You still see those glimpses of hope with young people dreaming that is possible.
He's definitely paved the path for many in not only District D and the historic West Side, but all across our region.
I hope that this inspires some young person who may have had a humble beginning like mine to know that you can make it. You can make it. Allow people out there to love on you and encourage you and pour into you.
Wow, ladies, I have to be honest. I feel like I do a lot in the community, but I'm even more inspired to do more in 2022 after watching this package.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, up next, making positive change in Phoenix. That's what we're talking about next. Stay right there. Hey guys, welcome back to Main Street Living. Now, Danielle, Cheryl, one of the many ways we are celebrating Black History Month is to highlight some of the positive changes going on in and around the communities around the country.
Yeah, that's right. The Urban League has been empowering communities and changing lives since 1910 in their fight for civil rights. Joining us today is President and CEO George Dean from the Greater Phoenix Urban League. Welcome to Main Street Living. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So we understand that you have been with the Urban League for 50 years, working in various locations like Phoenix, LA, Omaha, and you started in Phoenix in the early 70s. What would you say was the biggest challenge at that time?
Well, in the 70s, employment was the big thing. We were trying to get people of color, Black and brown folks, here in the Phoenix area, get them into jobs and so forth. Education was also a problem in terms of the fact that we had one of the highest dropout rates in the country as far as our high schools were concerned, and people graduated and so forth. Discrimination was still very strong, going very strong in the early 70s when I started with the Urban League and so forth. So that was another thing that we were working against. The Urban League is considered to be a civil rights social service organization. So when there's discrimination and prejudice and so forth, we work to try to correct those kind of things. And that was certainly the case in the early 70s.
What was the unemployment rate in the 70s for people of color, and what kinds of jobs were you providing training for? I know that education was a big part of what you guys do as well.
Well, we found we have in the Urban League what we call the hidden unemployment index, which means that people of color was at least 2 to 3 times greater than what the unemployment rate was. The unemployment rate, is figured by those folks who go to the unemployment offices. And a lot of our folks were not going to the unemployment offices because they didn't feel like they were doing anything for them, but they would come to us and so forth. So We were, the official unemployment rate was like 6%, and we were looking at 12, 13, 15% unemployment among Black and brown folks here in the Phoenix area.
Oh man. And I know the Urban League has learned on you a lot. You've taken on assignments in several different cities around the country. And then you
Yeah.
came back to Phoenix in the early 90s. What did you find had changed since the 70s there?
The more things change, the more they remain the same. There was still a lot going on in terms of the discrimination. Still was not finding people of color into elected positions and just really being a part of the society and so forth. So education was still a big problem. When I got back here, we was also looking at housing discrimination we're finding that banks was not living up to the Community Reinvestment Act in terms of making loans to the declination rate among Black and brown folks was like 5 to 1 as it was to white people and so forth. So like I said, the more they stay the same, the more things change, the more they stay the same and so forth. So that's still something that we are fighting against. Even now that we're in the 2000s, we're still fighting against those kind of things.
Well, one of the good things that's remained the same is that you guys are still providing all of these resources. And these days, your group is working to build civil engagement with voting rights initiatives, economic empowerment with programs for first-time home buyers. But one of the most significant might be your work on education and your Head Start programs. What can you tell us about those programs? How many you have operating? How many students are enrolled?
We're very, very, very proud of our Head Start program. In fact, we consider that our flagship program. We have some 1,100 young people, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds that's enrolled in our programs. They're working in 6 different school districts here in the greater Phoenix area. And they call it Head Start. We call it early childhood development because what we're doing is really teaching these young children, getting them ready for kindergarten and so forth, teaching them social relations, how to get along with each other and not hitting each other, and getting to know their alphabets and getting to know the names of where they live, their addresses where they live and so forth. So we're very proud of that program.
Awesome.
I'm helping so many kids.
Yes. Thank you for doing everything you're doing. And we got to wrap it up here. But quickly, how can people learn more and get in touch?
Well, they can get in touch with us a couple of ways. Number one, our phone number is 602-254-5611, or they can do www.gphxul.org.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Yeah, and there are Urban League affiliates all around the country. To find the group nearest you, just go to the National Urban League website at nul.org.
Great information as always, Cheryl. And coming up next, we are going to be heading to a very unique Hall of Fame. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back to Main Street Living. Quincy, Danielle, do you ever come across something that you never knew existed, but once you knew about it, you're so happy that it's there?
Yes, and I bet that's how our viewers are going to feel after they see the National Bobblehead Hall of Fame and Museum, which was founded by our next guest. Please welcome Phil Sklar. Phil, thanks so much for making time for us on Main Street Living.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, Phil, we have to know, why did you create this Hall of Fame and Museum for bobbleheads?
Yeah, so it started out with a single bobblehead. We produced a bobblehead of our friend and manager for a lot of the local sports teams named Michael. And that was in 2013. But going back to 2003, we got the first bobblehead in me and the other co-founder Brad's collection. And we loved it and started to collect and go to games that had bobblehead giveaways. And before we knew it, we had 3,000 bobbleheads in about 10 years. And realized there was no museum dedicated to bobbleheads, and so we took matters into our own hands.
Wow, 3,000 bobbleheads. And two of your recent additions, Phil, are bobbleheads featuring baseball legend Hank Aaron in his clown's uniform, which was part of the Negro Leagues. What's the special part about these bobbleheads?
Yeah, so in about 2019, we were contacted by the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum in Kansas City, Missouri, to produce a series of bobbleheads commemorating the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Negro Leagues, which was in 2020. And so we were really excited about that. I had been to the museum twice before, and it's really, players in a league that people need to know more about. And so we were thrilled because bobbleheads are a great way to teach people and engage people about different subjects, whether it's, the Negro Leagues or, certain people in history that are significant. So we were thrilled about that opportunity. And now to date, we've produced over 100 different bobbleheads for the Negro Leagues Museum, and portions of the proceeds go back to the museum. So they have a great cause as well. But Hank Aaron is one that we're really proud of. 2 different bobbleheads of him in his Indianapolis Clowns uniform, which is where he really got his start. He kickstarted his amazing career.
Well, I completely agree with you. I think more people need to know about the Negro Leagues. What can you tell us more about that story?
Yeah, so Hank Aaron, grew up in the South and was playing baseball. I actually played with like a stick, and grew up in a family that didn't have a lot of money. But somebody saw his athletic ability, and he played in a few different organized sort of semi-professional leagues, and got a chance to play with the Indianapolis Clowns, which was one of the premier Negro Leagues teams. And while with the Clowns, Major League Baseball scouts saw him and was signed by the Braves organization. And from there, he went to Eau Claire, which was the minor league team for the Braves at the time. And, he just took off, and, now is one of the best players ever to play the game. Obviously, we lost him last year. He passed away, but is a legend throughout the baseball world, and really an icon and history maker just with, what he did. He wasn't the first one. Obviously, Jackie Robinson really broke the color barrier, but he came shortly after that. And with his home run chase and reaching that 755 home run plateau, broke a lot of records, and really, made a lot of improvements for Black athletes, and not just baseball, but across sports.
Yeah, I know that clip that they've played. I've seen it, like on ESPN, like when he actually breaks it and the fans run on the field as he's running around the bases after he got that home run record. But that was when he was in his MLB days. So why is it so significant that these bobbleheads feature him in his Clowns uniform?
Yeah, so a lot of people don't realize that he even played in the Negro League. So I think that's really significant. At the time that he played with the Clowns, there was still a lot of players who couldn't play in the major leagues just because of the color of their skin, like Jackie Robinson, who, was the first to play in Major League Baseball as a Black athlete. And that just wasn't something, it's hard for a lot of people to believe now. That somebody, because of the color of their skin, couldn't play in the top league. And so that's really why it's so important to learn about the Negro Leagues and to learn about the history of that time, and just to make sure that doesn't repeat, and also to just sort of explore the history and the climate at that time. And one of the interesting things about the bobbleheads, we get people every once in a while that say he's batting the wrong way. He's actually batting cross-handed in the batting bobblehead, and that was how he batted until he went to the Eau Claire team, when they taught him the correct batting stance.
Information I didn't even know.
Yeah. Phil, before we let you go, how can viewers find out more information about all of this, about the museum, and also can they get their own Hank Aaron bobblehead?
Yeah, so on our website there, you can go ahead and shop online to get the Hank Aaron bobblehead, bobbleheadhall.com. You can visit the museum virtually. We have about 7,000 unique bobbleheads on display here in Milwaukee. You can see some of them behind me, but we have always growing collection with the Hank Aaron bobbleheads just being added, and new ones coming all the time, so people can follow along on our website and social media as well. And if you're in the Milwaukee area, stop by. And if not, go on a virtual tour today or whenever you have a chance from the comfort of your home or office.
Well, look at that. Thank you so much, Phil, for stopping by, and thanks for sharing the information with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Also, remember, you can find more information about the history of the Negro Leagues at nlbm.com. And speaking of getting more information, Danielle, we're previewing Black History Month programming on Your View up next. Stick around.
Welcome back to Main Street Living. Quincy, Danielle, one of the best things about celebration months like Black History Month is that it's a great reason to learn something new.
Yeah, Cheryl, I always feel like I come out of Black History Month with new insight into some aspect of history, or even like an incredible personality, a person that I didn't know about before.
Yeah, and Your View is providing a wide range of programming in honor of Black History Month, which is guaranteed to give you new insights, of course, including this incredible new show called America's Untold Journey. Take a look.
Where did it really begin? For African Americans everywhere, what is the rest of the story? What is our unknown heritage and tradition? I'm Jason Allen Carvel. Please join me for a dramatic story.
Before there were dreams of equal freedom in Philadelphia,
the incredible concepts that were written down in the Declaration of Independence were being fought for in Spanish Florida before there is the United States.
This is our history as key players in the first New World.
Africans participated, both free and enslaved, both men and women, in every single Spanish expedition in Spanish Florida.
Why has this story not come out? I would have loved to have heard about it when I was a kid. It would have completely changed my outlook on life.
Carolina slaves hear about a better life in Spanish Florida and risk their lives for a chance at freedom.
If you think about the Underground Railroad, most of what you learned in history is that the Underground Railroad went north up into Canada.
The first Underground Railroad runs south, not north.
We had free Africans at Fort Mose defending their town as freemen 100 years before the Emancipation Proclamation.
The first major defeat of the British Army in the New World occurred here at Fort Mose.
We came in 1866 at the request of Bishop Augustin Verreau, and he made it very clear that they were coming to teach the liberated slaves, that would be their work here. In 1916, 3 of our sisters were arrested, and it was on Easter Sunday.
By the 1960s, Lincolnville had become a vibrant African-American neighborhood, a stronghold of middle-class values and commerce.
Lincolnville was never totally segregated in terms of living.
Oh, we were a close-knit family of people. It was a lot of the Caucasian kids that we played with. They came to our houses and they played with us.
The long, hot summer of 1963 is about to intensify.
We are seeking to make this the oldest city in the United States, one of the most democratic cities in the United States.
Our whole foreign policy and everything else go to hell over this. Yesterday at the swimming pool in St. Augustine.
Join us on a 450-year journey back to the first America.
It goes without saying, but could not be said enough.
And a story largely untold until now.
That St. Augustine is the birthplace of freedom.
This is America's untold journey.
Wow, Danielle, Cheryl, I can tell you that untold stories like this are so important as far as Black history is concerned. It's definitely must-see TV.
Yeah, that's why it's so important to celebrate Black History Month.
Absolutely. And you can find descriptions of all of the programming Your View will be featuring for Black History Month on our website, yourview.com.
All right. Straight ahead, more of Main Street Living up next. Stay right there.
Welcome back into Main Street Living, Quincy, Cheryl. What a great show to kick off Black History Month.
Absolutely. So much to learn. Great people that we had on today. Always love bringing you this kind of information here on Main Street Living.
That's right. And all month, we're going to continue to celebrate Black History Month. So if you miss a favorite segment or any episode, always go to our Cox Contour app to check them out.
Yes, and we have brand new episodes, of course, every Monday at 9 p.m. local time. So make sure you join us then as we take another stroll down Main Street.